now we will be ready. Excellent, thank you. While we wait for Chuck, Lane, we're a committee of two, so we can approve the minutes from the last meeting. If you want to make a motion, I'll second your motion.
I move we accept the minutes from last meeting.
All right, second, all in favor? All right.
Aye.
All right, thanks. So, so the meeting tonight is with Clear Mountain Capital and their project here on 195. And so, guys, we're going to turn it over to you. And you definitely have as much time as you'd like. We do have to wrap up the meeting by 5:55 in order to make our next one. But take as much time as you'd like to present it, and we'll with that, I guess we'll turn it over to you guys.
All right, great. Jennifer, instead of a concept plan, we actually made a presentation. So it has the concept plan. Chuck, are you there?
He's on mute, but he looks like he's in the meeting.
Yeah, let me just. Hold on 1 second. I'll pull up the presentation in the meantime. Oh, he's there.
Hello, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Apologies, ran into some technical difficulties. All right, so I have my screen pulled up here. Nice to meet everyone. My name is Chuck Lee, and I'm here on behalf of the owners of 1750 Shores Road. I have with me today Jill Williams, our land use attorney, who's helped us through many projects through this town and others as well, hopefully in the future. And we also have here with me my colleague Jacob Entel, who just joined us from, who brings with him a lot of experience across different developments throughout the tri-state area. So hopefully everyone can see my screen at this point.
Yep.
And
Yes.
my plan for today is to go through what our project entails and what we envision. We currently have a proposal to the Planning and Zoning Commission to allow us to rezone this into the Mixed Use Center Transitional District, which we put into place with a lot of feedback and recommendations from the town to put into place to facilitate development of this site to meet some of the goals and objectives of the town, the residents, and also to further drive the economic development of these Four Corner area. Okay, so the agenda for today, I'm going to go through the property, the site, go through the concept, show what our vision will entail for this property. And along the way, please let me know if there's any other topics you'd like me to focus on, particularly as it relates to the economic development component. I believe this is the first time we've met with the EDC, and we look forward to continue to having more conversations to discuss this project and others. So on this page, 1750 Stores Road is the site here in the top left, marked by this red boundary. As you can see, we're located right across the street from a new development project, currently named as the Standard, which is also down the road from the Four Corners area at that intersection to the bottom right. So this site, we believe, is very well suited for continuing development, the economic development for this area. There aren't too many sites in town that have access to water and sewer, with this property being one of them. And one of the goals here is to utilize the existing resources that the town has to facilitate and achieve some of these economic development goals for the town. And so what we think, the property currently is split zoned, which is part of the reason why we wanted to propose the zone change. The split zoning consists of professional office in the front area along Stores Road, and the back area behind the professional office zoning is currently zoned for residential. And so through the course of creating the MCT zone with the town over the last year, we sought to preserve that concept, to continue to encourage commercial development and retail development closer to the Stores Road connection to the Four Corners. Reason being, we believe continuing to preserve that economic corridor is only going to help create that ecosystem where local residents can walk to work or be able to walk to access convenience stores, pharmacies, professional services, what have you. And so that's why we came up with this zone, the text that has already been included, and we'd like to transition our current zoning into this cohesive mixed-use transitional zone to allow for some of these concepts I've just discussed. This is our current concept plan you see on your screen. This plan is preliminary, although we feel that this is what we would like to be able to achieve. Once we get into the further stages of design and engineering, we'll be able to adjust things here and there. But the goal here is to create the multiple zones of activity that span across not just residential, but also inclusive of commercial office and retail, and also seek to provide some recreational open space that the town has mentioned that it desires for along the wetland areas, create more recreational hiking trails, and being able to preserve a lot of the rural character of the town of Mansfield. So in the front here, we have in the blue the commercial retail component. Our plan currently calls for 2 commercial buildings with the ground floor retail. The ground floor retail will be pulled up to the Stores Road corridor, along which there will be sidewalks for pedestrian traffic to frequent some of these new stores that we bring to the area. And above it will be 2 stories of commercial office. Our goal for the commercial office would be to provide spaces for professional offices, for attracting new workforce, next generation of workforce to the town of Mansfield, to provide them with the facilities they need for things such as tech startups, for co-working spaces, for retaining the workforce within the town of Mansfield, and particularly as it relates to the Four Corners area. Behind this commercial office retail component, where we have on the right-hand side here, the small residential, when we crafted the MCT zoning, we were keenly aware of the concerns around being adjacent to some of the surrounding lower density residential properties. And the goal of this zone was particularly focused on making sure that it would not be as impactful to the surrounding character of the neighbors. The small residential buildings that we envision here would consist of 2.5-story townhomes, not much higher than some of the surrounding properties. And because of the topography of our property, as it slopes down, most of these homes would be out of sight, out of mind for many of the neighbors to the east. In the middle of the page here, the middle residential is what we envision some moderately larger residential components. These are multifamily units, but are designed in a way that are similar to a large single-family home. In this way, we provide different options for different types of residents, whether it's a family looking for private townhouse space where they have multiple stories with open space in the front and the back, or a younger professional looking to start a career in town and prefers having a space that's more particular to his or her situation, and wanting to be able to have a community and being able to have neighbors and work together in a localized area. And so what we have here is a concept that provides different types of housing options, and to support and further, that'll also support, hopefully, with retaining and providing the housing opportunities that would help support the commercial office retail space on Stores Road. Currently, the retail component is about 16,000 square feet is what we're thinking. So, our current thought process includes things like cafes, grocery stores, pharmacies, convenience retail stores. The office component we talked about a little bit. And for the residential component behind the office buildings, we're thinking would be about 120 different residences. One key aspect to note is through multiple projects that we've worked with the town, we are very well aware of the desire for open space and green space. And so you'll see there are plenty of buffers along the eastern edge of the entire property to provide that additional buffer that will be planted, will be serve as open space for residents to be utilized for as their front yards, backyards, or areas in which they can enjoy the natural scenery. In addition to the buffer, we also have a center open area that will also serve as an amenity for the residents to for outdoor activities. To give some visual concept here, these are the types of commercial office spaces that we've seen and we think might be a fit for the office buildings we mentioned in our concept. The commercial buildings are allowed to go up to 3 stories, but we are required to provide a lot of windows to provide that activity that would encourage pedestrian traffic and walkability, and particularly the sidewalk access along the front of the buildings to access the rest of the Four Corners area. For the small form residential concepts, the townhomes will be, like I mentioned, 2.5 stories, a lot of windows, a lot of open space in the front and the back of the units, and also provide a mix of different facades that would create the interest for pedestrians walking through. So someone walking from the back of the property all the way to the front, and then thereafter through the stores will be able to enjoy, a visual diversity across the entire route. The middle residential components I mentioned earlier, these are the multi-family units, but are designed in a way that's very similar to some of the larger single-family homes that one might see throughout Connecticut. The beauty of these units is that they provide parking as well as a component, and also allows for keeping with the character of the surrounding neighborhood. As we've noted, some of the homes to the eastern edge of our property are homes that are sized similarly to the sort of footprint of some of these buildings. And so what does this ultimately lead to in terms of economic benefits to the town? Again, we hope that this property and this development can help support the desired growth by providing housing accommodations for a larger workforce. 120 units of residential housing can help support some of the new businesses that and entrepreneurship opportunities that the town has been looking for and wants to develop. And as a part of that, providing the spaces for some of that commercial activity. So office places for startups, office spaces for professional services, any sort of ancillary services associated with that. We believe our concept allows some of the more modernized facilities to be brought onto this Four Corners area and start to generate some of the local workforce specific to this neighborhood. And finally, the key thing is the generating tax revenues for public infrastructure projects. Some of the key things that we think this project can bring would include retail sales taxes, improved real estate property taxes once the property is built, and along with that, commercial business income tax, additional fees and assessments for infrastructure utilization. And so we think this project, because of the way we've designed it to be a live, work, and play ecosystem, we think this can help achieve all of these goals for the town of Mansfield and further their objective for economic development here. The last point I kind of want to make is just to highlight from a zoning and planning perspective, the rationale behind this transitional zone. So in the darker red area, this is the higher density. This is the higher density zoning at the Four Corners, and in the pink area where our property is located, this pink area is what we are trying to create as a transitional district that will help bridge this higher density area and serve as a separation between this higher density area with the lower density residential neighborhood so to the north and to the west. Some of the key things we considered when we designed this zone and our concept for the property is to make sure we are promoting a walkable environment, human scaled environment where we're not overwhelmingly tall. The building sizes aren't going to be massive. Incorporating different types of buildings, creating that visual interest, as I mentioned, and also importantly, to preserve and protect any sort of sensitive natural resources, and utilize landscaping to continue to build that character, the rural character of the town. And so we think what we're proposing here, particularly as we focus on the streetscape and the pedestrian, the impact of pedestrians and how to facilitate more pedestrian traffic, we think our concept here is meeting the goals, is trying to meet the goals for future economic growth in a controlled manner. And with that, are there any specific questions that we'd like to discuss for this project?
Yeah, I have a question. You mentioned because of the topography, the impact to the abutting neighborhood would be minimized. Can you elaborate more on that?
Sure, yeah. I will go back to that slide. So if you can see here, you'll see that topography of our site, it's a little faint because this is not the engineering set. The engineering set will be worked on upon successfully rezoning this property into the MCT zone. But you'll see from these light gray lines here that the topography goes from, it looks like 618 feet of elevation, and it scales down to, I believe it was in the mid 500s. And so what happens is as these homes step down and the neighbors sit on top of the hill, looking out from their property, and given the fact that our the townhomes on this site are 2.5 stories only, you're not going to see as much of the full facade of these townhomes.
Thank you.
No problem.
Did you have any questions, or can I keep going?
Sorry. I just will never, ever get that right all the time. I did have one question. So I just wanted to be clear in terms of where I'm oriented. So this 195, as it runs between this proposed development and the one other side of the street, are both one lane going each way, right?
Correct.
Okay.
We've done a traffic study to make sure that the development based on this concept we provided will not have major traffic impact. We have a letter based on Lang and our engineer's assessment that this wouldn't require any changes to the current traffic system. as currently designed.
That's good to know.
Yep.
Thanks.
And how does the 120 units from a density perspective compare to what's going to be across the street?
It's going to be very different, actually. The way we envision it is, if you look at the standard here, I believe they have 5.5 stories at certain points for this development, which coincides with the PB3 zoning. It's allowed to be of that scale, and our property, and particularly as it relates to the MCT zoning, is to serve as a transition from that high scale into lower density and ultimately into sort of the single family neighborhoods to the north and the west. So if you can imagine what it would look like here is you would have these 5.5 story type buildings on the other side of Stores Road. You would cross the street here, have a sidewalk where we would have our 3-story, so about 2/3 of the height of the buildings at the standard. So 3-story office buildings with retail on the ground floor to service as an amenity for not just the residents on our property, but also residents in the surrounding Four Corners area. And as we move towards the west and north of the property, what you'll have is smaller scaled residential components. The 2.5-story townhomes will be the ones they're of the smallest scale, and therefore we thought it would be a good idea to place those closer to where the residential buffer is, the 50-foot buffer. And to the west, where our current neighbor is, I think, light manufacturing. It used to be a cannabis shop. I'm not sure if you're familiar, but it's currently, I think, mixed-use office. So along the boundaries where we do not have a residential component or residential neighbor, we would be able to put residential, middle-scale residential, such as the ones I showed earlier, which more resemble sort of the larger single-family home types. And so ultimately, if I zoom out on this map, it goes from the 5 stories to the 3 stories to the 2.5 stories, and then to open space completely for hiking trails and open space activities. And the town also owns this parcel here, adjacent to the former cannabis tenant. What we'd love to do is have a conversation with the town to bring some form of recreational hiking trail that can attach to Stores Road and also connect to the back of our property as well, which is something that we've looked into for our other project on Cedar Swamp Road.
So I just want to note that it is 5:53.
Okay, thanks, Josh. Lane, anything else from your perspective?
Nope.
Go ahead.
One additional thing I'd like to mention is that this property, the residential component, will also be subject to the affordable housing rules, and we will be bringing a mix of not just market rate residential, but affordable housing as well as part of this development.
Great. This has been tremendously helpful. Thank you very much, and very, very thorough, and you had a great presentation and very easy to follow. So thank you very much for taking the time to do this and bring this before us. As we mentioned, we do have our meeting in a couple of minutes, so I think we're probably have to leave it at that, unless you have anything you'd like to add, or anyone else has anything they want to add briefly.
I'm okay from my end. Jacob or Joe, did you have anything you want to throw in?
No, I think you were very thorough.
We're very excited about the project. We've been working very closely with P&Z staff and the commission to try to implement exactly what the town's plan says they want for this property. So we're glad to talk with you about it and appreciate the chance to engage with you on it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for coming tonight and for the presentation and for answering all of our questions. We really appreciate it.
Thank you
All
all.
right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
so
everyone.
much.
Care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.